Hey everybody, it's Mike from DestinyGuitar.com, and today we're going to be talking about the D chord. The D chord is a 4-string chord, which means that you don't play all of the strings on the guitar in order to sound it. In the D chord, I think, if I remember correctly, the D chord was the first chord I ever learned on the guitar when I sat down to play. And I looked at a chord diagram. I saw where to put my fingers, but I didn't know that you weren't supposed to play where the little X's were in the diagram. In other words, those X's mean don't play these strings. And so I may have fretted it correctly, but then I played all of the strings on the guitar, and it didn't sound quite right to me. So it's good to know that you don't play where the X's are in the chord chart. It's also good to know that on this chord that you're only going to be playing 4 strings. So it's a fairly simple chord to play once you get that muscle memory in place. And so let's just jump right in and play the D chord. To play the D chord, you take your first finger and you place it on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. You take your 2nd finger and you place it on the 2nd fret of the 1st string. And then you take your 3rd finger and you place it on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Now, one of the things that is challenging about this chord is that if you lay your hand kind of flat or back, or it's cocked at a funny angle, you're going to find that this sort of fleshy part of your finger is going to dampen some of the other strings, and it won't sound correct. So the way to resolve that is make sure that you're holding your hand correctly on the neck, which means that your fingers are coming around the top of the neck and you're placing your fingertips right there on the frets. And if you find, especially with this 3rd finger, if you find that it is causing a problem with this 1st string, then what you're doing is you're laying that finger back, and it's dampening that top string. So make sure that you come over the top and place it on like that. You may need to actually rock your hand forward just a little bit, almost like in a way, one way to think about this is to put your fist there in your hand, and then that sort of almost like you're holding a tennis ball or something. That's the position you want your hand in to play this chord. So the first string that you play is this open string right here. And that's one of the reasons why it's called an open chord, because you actually need one of these strings that you're not fretting anything on. In other words, it's open. I play that note without fretting anything. That's an open chord. All of the open chords are named for that reason. It may look like my pinky's doing something here, but it's not. It's out of the way. I'm just happen to be holding it up like this. Another thing to note when you're learning these basic chords and beginner's chords for the guitar is that it's always a good idea to fret the note as close to the fret as you possibly can without being right on top of the fret, because if I were to get on top of this fret, then I wouldn't be able to sound that note properly. See, it's sort of dull. But if I get just behind that fret, it sounds correct. I don't have to cram my fingers up and make sure that they're all right on those frets, although I suppose that it would sound good that way. Really do what's comfortable, but just try and get as close as possible. It's nice that we have all this room in between the frets down here on the lower part of the neck, because sometimes when we play chords, our hand needs to move and stretch, and we need all that room in order to sound it. But I'll just tell you that if you play it down in this area where you've got it just behind the fret, it will sound the best. Now, a little bit about theory, and I'll just tell you right now, you don't need to know this theory in order to play the D chord. If you can fret these notes and you can play those 4 strings, well then you've got a D chord and you can move on. But it is sometimes nice to understand what it is we're playing. And the notes in a D chord, you really need 3 notes in order to form a major chord. And the 3 notes in a D chord are D, F sharp, and A. And what we're playing here on the guitar is actually a D, which is this open string here. And then we're playing an A, and we're playing another D, and then up here is the F sharp. That's one of the cool things about the guitar is that sometimes notes are doubled, and that makes the chord sound very full and rich, if you will. In other words, it sounds bigger, and that's cool. And in this case, we're actually just doubling the root of the chord, or the D. And so all those notes are in there. All 3 notes are in there, and we have one doubled. That's the 4 notes, and that's the D chord. Now, I've been asked before what to do about strumming and how you avoid playing these lower notes when you're strumming. And there's a couple of ways to do this. One is that you just strum these top 4 strings as best you can, and you only strike down on that note when you strum. But a way to give yourself a sort of an insurance policy that you're not going to play the wrong notes when playing the D chord is, if you can, and don't let this bother you if you can't today, eventually you'll have a little bit more hand stretch, or maybe if you've got small hands, it won't exactly work for you, but if you can, another way to ensure that you're not going to play the wrong notes is to wrap your thumb over and actually dampen these 2 strings with it. Now, the way that I do that is this sort of fleshy part of the thumb that's there. I'm able to not only dampen this bottom note, but then I wrap it a little further and I just barely touch this string, and that then dampens it. So if I were to accidentally strum those 2, they wouldn't sound. I might get a little percussive thing happening there, which may not be bad, but that's how I do it. So go for it. Practice and get your fingers in position, have all the notes ring out clear, and yeah, just put in a few minutes a day, and I think you'll find that you're going to be real happy with the way that you play that D, in as little as 30 days. Hey, check out one-on-one guitar lessons. Learning online is fantastic, but nothing beats one-on-one instruction. So when you're a beginner, the best thing to do is find somebody who can teach you face-to-face. In the meantime, you can check out all our other videos on destinyguitar.com.